What's going on, everybody? Johnny Bannon, the networking guru here. In today's video, we're going to be going over domain 1.4 of the CYSA CompTIA exam. Make sure you like, subscribe, share with your friends, hit that bell, and let's go ahead and jump right into it. I'm going to get my face out of the way. All right, so on the screen here, you can see we're going over domain 1.4. That is compare and contrast threat intelligence and threat hunting concepts. And in this section, we're going to be going over threat actors, their TTPs, and confidence levels. So in domain 1.4, this is everything we have to go over. And you can see it's a lot. So I'm going to be covering this in a couple different slides. In today's video, we're just going to be going over, again, threat actors, tactics, techniques, and procedures, and again, the confidence levels. And what we mean by confidence levels is really just like, oh, how confident are we that this is an attack or isn't an attack, right? Or how confident are we of what type of threat actor is conducting this attack? Okay, so threat actor is in a general term, right? Holistic overview of what a threat actor is. So in cybersecurity, defending your network is, or defending your enterprise, right, is not just a one task kind of thing. What I mean by that is we have a defense in depth approach. So whether we're in an IT or OT environment, we need to have technical defenses, physical defenses. We need to have the right processes, procedures, the right incident response, the right planning, the right management support. It is an onion, and each layer of that onion is a piece of defending our enterprise. Now, the people that are attacking our enterprise, we can just group those up into a term called a threat actor. So those are teams or individuals that attack your network for whatever their motivations may be. That term threat actor doesn't care about that. It just is a team or individual that's attacking your network. And we can now define the different types of threat actors and their motivations, their sophistication, their financial, their funding, right? We can start to categorize these threat actors to make it easier for our blue teams and our SOC analysts to defend against them. Because if we know what type of threat actor is attacking us, we may be able to delineate their TTPs, how they're going to do it, how they're funding, and again, their motivations. So each threat actor operates with different levels of skill, motivation, and resources. Some are highly organized and funded by governments, nation states, APTs, while others are amateurs, and others are driven by curiosity, while others are driven by maybe some moral cause. So knowing who our adversary is can help us in our defense. Okay, so an APT, let's define an advanced persistent threat. So this is a highly skilled, typically team. Yes, it can be an individual. This is a highly skilled, well funded, well resourced threat actor that is typically sponsored by a nation state, either directly or indirectly. And what I mean by indirectly is sometimes there'll be APT teams like the Sandworm team that we all know are funded by Russia, but they're not officially part of the Russian government, right? So this is a group. I'm sure there is. I'm not that well versed, but I'm sure there is an individual APT out there. But these are typically a team, an advanced persistent threat team. That's why you hear the term APT team. So it's typically a group rather than an individual that carries out prolonged and targeted cyber attacks against specific organizations or nation states or sectors. So there can be APT teams that are specific to a sector, that they always attack finance industry. They always attack OT environments or the electrical sector. And that's what they specialize in. Because a lot of times those sectors have repeatable hardware and technologies, right? So if like you're working in the oil industry, the pipelines that your competitors also power and use and the technology behind it is probably all the same, probably all from a similar vendor, right? So APTs, though, how we characterize them are by their strategic goals, technical sophistication, stealthy operations, and the ability to maintain long-term access. So that is another big difference in an APT to other threat actors, is they remain persistent on your environment without you knowing. That's the goal, is that they remain persistent and their exploits may not be right there in your face noticeable. That's what makes them sophisticated. The ability to get in, the ability to stay in undetected. So APT groups often follow a structured life cycle. And this is their, almost like their playbook, the red team, the attacker playbook, to getting persistence on that network and doing exploitation, whatever the exploitation or the whatever malicious activities they want to do. So first it always begins with some sort of reconnaissance. Then they move to initial access. So they're using some sort of social engineering, some sort of exploit, some sort of threat vector that they start attacking. If that's the human side, a technical side. And then once they're in, they establish persistence. That's what we've been talking about, where they get compromised credentials or they set in back doors. They always have a way in or they're living on the network. And then once they're in your network, they're doing the actual goal, right? Which is that exfiltration, uh, you know, executing malicious payloads on your environment, or disrupting operations, whatever the case may be. Now, what makes APTs different again is their resources that allow them to be patient. Where like a script kiddie or someone that just wants to hack, they may have a day job, they have a life. Well, people part of these APT teams may have a life, but they're funded and they can take their time, right? That's what gives them their persistence. So many APTs are believed to be state sponsored or operate with tactic approval from governments, making them difficult to attribute and even harder to deal with. But again, we know, right, that they are. Because who else would be funding this, right? Maybe corporate espionage in some cases. But like APT 28, APT 10, those are linked to Russia and China respectively. And in this image here, I don't know if y'all can see it, but I have a little just a screenshot of APT 28. So we look at APT 28, the screenshot, I got it from the attack.miter.org. This is the MITRE framework that will go over the different TTPs of all these advanced persistence threats called the MITRE matrix. Please check it out if you get the time. There's the link right there, attack.miter.org. Looking at these matrices on the MITRE website, looking at these frameworks is another like hard cybersecurity skill. Okay, moving on to a hacktivist. So a hacktivist, these are going to be individuals or groups, but definitely can be individuals that use hacking techniques to promote a political, social, ideological agenda. So without going through all these slides, and I did a little bit deeper dive on the APTs, but a hacktivist is just someone that targets your organization based off their morals, based off a political agenda. As a cybersecurity defender, if you're in an organization that may be in the news, that may be a target of these like social police or these social hackers, it's just something you got to know about, something you got to be prepared for, be knowledgeable of. So a well-known example of this is the group Anonymous, which has targeted governments and corporations in the past. But for the exam now, for the CYSA, a hacktivist, what you need to know is that they're drawn by social, political, and moral values to hack or to attack. Okay, organized crime. So organized crime is not as like, sexy or dangerous as movies may seem. It's not some guys in a factory somewhere hacking the government, getting into the mainframe, releasing the Epstein files. That's not what organized crime always is. Typically, this is just these, scam or spam farms, these phishing farms that are in these foreign countries that are just trying to get you to pay things in gift cards, telling you your grandma, hey, she needs to redeem this code or your son's going to jail, things like that. So organized crime groups in the cyber domain function similarly to traditional crime syndicates, but they just use technology and cyber tools and a lot of time the human element to conduct their organized crime. So some cyber crime groups, ransomware deployments would be the technical one where they're building ransomware, sending out these phishing emails, getting you to install it, then asking for Bitcoin. We have credit card skimming, data theft and resale. So maybe organized crime, they try to hack into like credit bureaus and then sell that information on the dark web. But a lot of times, I got one today where some company was reaching out for this amazing remote job opportunity. All they needed was some information from me and they can put me in contact with the recruiters and I get this amazing job and they just found me, right? It's not, it's a scam. And that's organized crime in cyber because they're using SMS. So that's a smishing technique, right? Phishing, but using SMS. So that's what organized crime is in cyber. Now, as far as the CYSA exam, the SOC analyst, what you need to know is that a lot of times these are targeting your credentials. They're trying to exploit you, get credentials out of you, install ransomware. So a lot of times in your environments, when you're protecting against organized crime, it's really two things. One, education and awareness. Making sure users can recognize phishing attacks, smishing attacks, vishing attacks, getting them to ask the right questions to determine this is fake, right? Like, oh, you're really our help desk technician? Well, let me just go on my global address list and see if your email's in here real quick, right? On Outlook. There's simple ways. Let me just look at this phone that this phone number that messaged me saying I had a toll to pay for $400. Let me just input that into Google. Oh, it's part of, scams before. So that education. But then if you do get exploited and you do give up your credentials to this scammer that sent you a link to log into to access your Facebook, Instagram, whatever, and you put in your real username and password, now they have that. Now they're trying to attack your bank accounts with that information. It's called credential harvesting. Um, um, and then MFA, right? Multi-factor authentication. On the technical side, we can say, hey, let's put in some additional authentication steps just in case our users' credentials do get harvested. Okay, so moving on now from organized crime, now we go into a nation state. So we kind of already touched nation state. We went over advanced persistent threats. So a nation state is just a government entity that's going to sponsor different threat actor activities. So nation state actors are threat actors that act on behalf of a national government or with its explicit support. These actors are among the most capable in the world as they have access to vast resources, advanced technologies, and often operate with political legal immunity within their own countries, meaning that they can hack freely, that they can attack and do red team activities freely with like not unlimited funding, but with the right amount of funding and resources that their governments deem necessary to try to gain that strategic edge, that advantage, or to conduct large scale cyber attacks on critical infrastructure of their adversaries. So their objectives vary by nation, but often include espionage, sabotage, influence operations, or theft of intellectual property, of what says military secrets on our slide here, but just secrets in general. Whether that be like big companies within that or big companies in that country. Like the US, a lot of our big tech companies are subject to threat actor nation state attacks, even though they don't directly represent the US, it's infrastructure that the US relies on. Okay, a script kiddie. So the term script kiddie is used to describe an inexperienced or unskilled individual who uses existing hacking tools but has no fundamental knowledge, no knowledge really at all, just maybe download stuff from GitHub, goes on Kali Linux, runs some of the frameworks there that are pretty easy to use step by step just to do some sort of hacking. So despite their lack of expertise, they can still pose a real threat, especially if they're on the inside, right? Like if we have an insider threat that identifies as a script kiddie or does techniques that a script kiddie would do, that can still pose a problem just because of their level of access. So script kiddies may be motivated by boredom, a desire for notoriety, curiosity, or a misguided attempt to gain status within online communities. Now, obviously, their sophistication is a lot less than any APT or nation state or even organized crime. It's still something we have to be wary of as a SOC analyst or as part of the blue team on our organization. Okay, insider threats. So we're going to go over two definitions of insider threats as defined by the CYSA exam. So an insider threat is anybody that has insider knowledge or insider access that does something malicious, intentional or unintentional. And that's where we get our definition. So the first definition, intentional insider threat, this arises when someone from inside the organization deliberately misuses their access to cause harm. They could be doing data exfiltration, sending intellectual property, or executing malicious payloads. Now, this could be for a host of different reasons. Within the government, we learned that this is typically like an insider threat happens uh, due to life events. Due to something happening in their life, they become an easy target for someone to activate, right? And what we mean by that is if you're going through financial struggles, life struggles, you're upset with the government, it's easy for our adversaries to target you as a potential insider threat. So their motivations may include financial gain, revenge, ideology, coercion, or even espionage. An example beyond just government, right? Again, I come from a government background, so when I hear insider threat, I think of like a soldier or a sailor or a government contractor, government employee sending secrets to China or Russia or any of our adversaries for some minute financial gain. Crazy. But another example of this beyond just that government sphere is an employee who feels wrongfully terminated might delete critical files, might put a logic bomb, might completely turn off your system entirely. Maybe they're that senior engineer that feels wronged and they're like, you know what? I'm going to mess you guys up before I leave, before you fire me. So, high level overview, intentional insider threat is someone that deliberately does it, deliberately tries to do something malicious to your organization. Now, an unintentional insider threat. So this is someone that still has that inside access that does something not intentional, not malicious in nature. So an example of this is a user maybe uploading their work to like a public Dropbox so they can reach it from home, not on their corporate workstation. And all of a sudden they expose that. They expose that corporate secrets to the public internet. And they didn't, do this to say, hey, I want someone to steal it. They said, oh, I want to work at this from home. So it's a well-meaning employee. It could also be someone that just falls for a phishing attack and they just didn't know. They didn't have the right training. They have the right awareness. They were, it's early in the morning. They're going through emails, just clicking things. They're just on TV mode in their brain, not really thinking critically. And they hit that link and now their system gets exploited with malware and that malware is spreading. That's an unintentional insider threat. It's typically just due to human error, lack of training, or poor awareness. Now, the problem is though, yes, it's unintentional. We may not fire that employee. It's not like we're not going to sue them. There's not going to be something legal happening. The worst is like a probation because maybe they went through the training and they still fell victim to a phishing attack. And now we're getting data exfiltrated and we're in the news. But it's still something we have to be aware of that we have to protect our systems from. So having that zero trust architecture, continuously doing training and awareness, continuous monitoring is how we protect against these unintentional insider threats. Okay, a supply chain. So a supply chain threat involves vulnerabilities or malicious activity introduced through third-party relationships. This is when you're working with vendors, MSPs, service providers, and somewhere in that chain from A to B to the product going to your customer or what you're providing to a customer, somewhere it gets exploited. So that is a supply chain threat or attack. It depends on other entities, third parties that are that link in the chain that causes that downstream effect to infect your supply chain. And now there may be malware or data exfiltration or a backdoor in a system that you deployed to a customer's network that you said was safe. So one of the most infamous examples of supply chain attack is the SolarWinds breach in 2020. SolarWinds, a network monitoring software that's used all throughout the government. It's, a huge company that has huge amounts of access to many different networks and different enterprises in the government and civilian side. It was compromised. The build process of the networking product was compromised. So somewhere in that supply chain where we got these other software libraries integrated into the network management software SolarWinds was exploited. So that was considered a supply chain attack. Okay, defining TTPs. So the acronym TTP, tactics, techniques, and procedures. So let's define these. I have up there an image, just a quick little screenshot of the MITRE attack matrix where you can figure out TTPs of different APTs, advanced persistent threats, a lot of acronyms coming at you. You can see it categorizes them. So if we want to learn about credential access, brute force attacks, we could click that link on the MITRE website. We could go through the different APTs that do this kind of attack and learn about their TTPs. Gotta slow down with going over those acronyms. But now let's define each word in that acronym TTP. So tactics. Tactics are the high-level goals of the attacker. Examples include gaining initial access, maintaining persistence, or exfiltrating data. These describe what the attacker is trying to accomplish during a phase of attack. A technique. So techniques are how the attacker achieves this goal. So for example, if our tactic is to get initial access, we may use phishing as the technique for that initial access. And then P, procedures. So procedures are the specific implementations or variations of techniques used by an individual threat actor. So for instance, two groups may use phishing, but one uses fake job applications with macro list documents, while another sends spoof vendor invoices with malicious links. So just procedurally, how do we get to that, how do we do the technique? Okay, now we're gonna go over the different confidence levels. So timeliness. So timeliness refers to how recent or up-to-date the threat intelligence is. So in cybersecurity, timing is critical. What we mean by this is, if we're implementing IDS and we're subscribed to a threat feed that's giving us the most up-to-date signatures and malware-based signatures, we want to make sure we're getting things that are most up-to-date. Because if we're getting something a month old, there could be like 2 zero-day exploits that have happened within that month. Now on the timeliness of an attack. So in cybersecurity, information about a vulnerability, right? An exploit or an attack must be received and processed before the threat has done damage. So learning about something before it can actually spread throughout our network is very important. And that's up to us to create those systems and those alerting processes that are going to spit that information quick to us based on that severity, and we get the alerts fast. So for example, if a threat intelligence feed alerts you to a phishing campaign targeting industry, and that alert comes within hours of first attack, the intelligence is timely and highly valuable. Okay, relevancy. Relevancy measures how applicable a piece of threat intelligence is to your specific organization, systems, geography, or industry. So not all threats are equal for all entities. A malware variant targeting European financial institutions may be of little relevance to a healthcare provider in Asia. And really what this comes down to is understanding your sector, right? Understanding the organization you're in, understanding who will be attacking you, and understanding what threat feeds are relevant to you and what research you should be doing for your organization. And then, of course, accuracy. So accuracy refers to how correct or error-free the threat intelligence is. It assesses whether the information can be verified and whether the conclusions drawn from it are supported by evidence. In other words, is the data factually correct and logically sound? So accuracy, this depends on a lot of things. And this kind of gets into like when you're doing incident response and you're looking at the flags. So this is a false positive, a true positive, false negative, is how do we determine, yes, this is a malicious attack, right? So accuracy often depends on the source of the intelligence. Information derived from direct observations is typically more accurate than speculation or hearsay. So intelligence providers may assign a numerical or categorical confidence score. Okay, now let's go ahead and do our quiz for domain 1.4.1. Okay, so we're at our custom LMS here. Let's go to my CYSA course. Let's go here to lessons, and we'll come here to domain 1.4.1. We'll come down here to take the domain quiz. I'll zoom in for us here, and let's go ahead and do it. So question 1, a cybersecurity analyst receives, and we got 5 questions here. So question 1, a cybersecurity analyst receives an intelligence report about a ransomware strain that was active 6 months ago, affecting a specific Linux kernel version not used in their environment. What confidence factor is primarily lacking in this intelligence? This is a tricky one, right? Because essentially it's saying, 1, it does not relevant to us, and 2, it came in super late. So we have to determine what is more accurate. Is this talking about the timeliness, or is this talking about the relevancy? So I am going to go with the relevancy because it's not using their environment at all. So yes, it's 6 months late, but it's just not, it's not used at all, right? So I think relevancy is more important here. That's a tricky one. Question 2. Which of the following best describes a threat actor that uses pre-built tools and lacks deep technical understanding, often launching opportunistic attacks without a specific target? So right here, pre-built tools and no technical understanding, that's going to be a script kiddie. C, script kiddie. Question 3. Which of the following best describes an unintentional insider threat? So unintentional, meaning a good-willed employee that messed up, fell victim to a phishing attack or something. So A, a former employee using backdoor access to sabotage internal systems, more than likely no. B, an employee who clicks on a phishing link and exposes login credentials, more than likely we're going to go with B. Then we have C and D. So this is a vendor deliberately leaking sensitive client data, no. And then D, a nation state actor using social engineering, that's not going to be an insider threat. So we're going to go with B here. An employee who clicks on a phishing link and exposes login credentials. Okay, question 4. In the context of cybersecurity threat intelligence, what do tactics represent in the tactics, techniques, and procedures TTP model? So now we're just defining what tactics is within that TTP acronym. So we're going to go with B here. That is the overarching goals or objectives that an attacker is trying to achieve. That is what tactic means. Okay, last question. Let's try to get 100. What is a defining characteristic of an advanced persistent threat, APT, that distinguishes it from other threat actors? So we're probably going to go with A here. It is to conduct long-term targeted operations with stealth and persistence. That is one thing about APTs, is that they can be persistent and long-term because of the resources they have. All right, so we got 100% here, guys. Let's go. I want to thank everyone for viewing. Make sure you like and subscribe, and I'll see you in our next video as we continue on in Domain 1.4 of our CYSA course.